Good morning. This is Badiur Zaman. I hope so. You guys have a good day. I'm working with MRGT Solutions as a CTO, and I'm taking care of Reddit side of the company business. That includes trainings as well solutions. So MRGT is an infrastructure and a training company. So on a training side, we have a partnership with Red Hat, and we deliver almost all portfolio of Red Hat courses from system administration level to architect level. And there are a couple of courses which are for OpenStack, like OpenStack administration, OpenStack engineering, and then we have Docker containers, and we are providing training for Docker. And the product we are using for Docker containers is OpenShift, which is a more powerful a product as a use as a container as a service. And then we have Red Hat Satellite, which is used for the configuration management and the provisioning of systems. And then we also provide Ansible, Puppet, and a lot of others training like Ceph and Red Hat performance tuning, clustering, as well troubleshooting. And on cybersecurity, we are partnered with EC Council as well. We also provide this CASP, CEH, and most related courses like CSM, ECSA. And then we also have the portfolio with Microsoft courses. We provide Microsoft Office related courses, Excel, Microsoft Azure, Office 365, Exchange, Visio. And then we have management courses as well. There we provide the courses related to management. We are also partnered with CompTIA and provide CompTIA certification like Network Plus, A Plus, Security Plus, Storage Plus. We are also being a Cisco partner. We deliver CCNA, CCNP, CCNP security, CCI security, as well other Cisco certification like service provider, RASN security, and then we also partner with Oracle, and we also deliver Oracle courses like Oracle courses for enterprise Linux, and then we are partnered with Autodesk, and we provide design courses like 3D Max, AutoCAD, and like Maya and this thing. We are also partnered with Pearson VUE and PSI, and as well we have partnership with Reddit as a QSIC one-to-one exam delivery as well as classroom delivery. We are only one Reddit partner who have a classroom training as well classroom exam availability in whole Pakistan. And on subsidy side, we offer subsidies for system integration, data storage and security, data center infrastructure, software solutions like software development, network system monitoring, security, cloud and hosting solution, monitoring, and as well provide call center and help desk services. These are our some of clients which we are currently working with at Pakistan. We have like Telenor and IBM, which is now intermediate parent of Red Hat because they acquired Red Hat last year. So we are also working with Telenor and IBM. So on the training side, we have also authorized Pearson VUE Center, and also EC Council. And so we have offices in Islamabad, and we have other offices in Karachi and Lahore. We have office in Dubai, and we are also starting in USA. It's almost done. So let me now introduce about me. So I have more than 12-year experience on open source. I started my career back in 1917 from 1997, and I started learning Microsoft stuff and become Microsoft certified engineer in 1999. And then 2006, I felt that this is not the right technology for me, so I moved to Linux side, and I become a Red Hat certified engineer in 2007, and then keep on working with the Red Hat, and I'm the right now I'm the most I'm the most most I'm a guy with the most strong profile with Red Hat. So currently, I'm the like second instructor in Pakistani community as a who is certified from Red Hat. I mean, I'm the second RSCA in Pakistan, Red Hat certified instructor, as well as I'm the one who achieved Red Hat certified security specialist certification back in 2000. And then I have other certification like Red Hat certified JBoss administrator, Red Hat certified virtualization administrator, engineer, system administrator, and a lot of other certificates. So today I'll be discussing about Red Hat courses and certification. So the basic, the start level course is, you can say is a baby step for you in Linux system administration in Red Hat certified system administrator. This is the first step you have to start with. So it consists of two courses, which is first is the level 1, and the course code is Red Hat RH124, and the code name is Red Hat certified system system administration level 1. This is the level 1 course, and then we have the second course, which is known as level 2, and the course code is RH134, Red Hat system administrator level 2. So on these courses, each course is like 40 hours, consists of 40 hours, and it's a performance-based interactive course where you will be have a classroom setup where you will perform all the tasks, labs, and and other practices. And on this course, you will be having an exam afterward, which is EX200. It's a 2.5 hour exam, which enables you to become Red Hat certified system administrator. And after that, you will be having with the level 3 course, which is known as RH254, RH259, 259, which is a new course with Ansible automation. It means it's a RSCE automation. So this course, Red Hat will be checking your skills using Ansible, a DevOps tool. You have to perform all tasks using Ansible. So Red Hat certified system administrator first course, which is known as Red Hat system administration level 1, and the code is RH124. We will be this this is consists of these tasks and chapters. Like first is getting started with the Red Hat Enterprise Linux. You will be studying about what is Linux and how Linux develop and what is the benefits if you are studying Linux or using Linux. And the second chapter will be working with the command line. That because in Linux is mostly the servers. When we talk about the servers, they are mostly on the virtual console. It means you have only command line interface. So the second chapter, it's about how you can work with the command line. So how you can access the command line, how you can type the commands on the prompt, how you can use the bash shell. And the bash shell is very similar to a command prompt. You guys mostly work with Windows, and you know you see a tool known as command prompt, where you when you try to check the connectivity with the other system, you use ping command. Like you are checking if internet is working or not. You just type ping, then the Google server address, and if you reply, it means you are good. So because Linux is mostly the command line, so here we will go for learning about command lines, that how we can access the command lines interface and how we can type the commands. Like for example, I say that you guys have some issue and you just call me and told me that internet is not working. I'll say just open the command line and type ping the Google server address, which is 8.8.8.8. And you just open the command prompt. You are not much familiar with the command line. You just type ping without any space. You put 8.8.8, and they say, oh, sir, this say command not found. So actually, you don't know how to write a command on the shell. So writing on a command on a shell, you have to separate all the options, or arguments with a space. So you have to write ping, and you have to put a space, and then you have to type the Google server address. Then it will work accordingly. Otherwise, if you write ping and without any space, you type the command, it will say, okay, the command is not found. And then after that, we'll be and the beauty of this Red Hat courses and training is they are interactive. You have seen that there is a quiz, and after that there's a guided exercise, and there's also at the end there is a lab. So it means every topic, after studying every topic, you will be having a guided exercise. That or here you can see accessing the command line using the desktop. So after the first topic, you will moving to a guided exercise. So what is a difference between the guided exercise and a lab? So guided exercise, Red Hat provide you step by step guidance. Like, okay, they're supposed to create you a user and assign a password in a guided exercise. So what they do, they will teach you all the steps. Okay, first step will be opening the command line shell, and then you will be typing, user add command with different arguments and options, and then you will be using passwd command with the user argument. So here they will tell you everything step by step, like a baby. But in lab, they will just give you an assignment, like in the exam. They will give you an assignment. They say, okay, create a user Alex with password Red Hat. So they will not tell you any step. But here, each chapter is consists of multiple guided exercises. Mean to say each topic has a guided exercise. And at the end, they have a lab exercise which you have to perform without any help. But the beauty is that if you stuck somewhere, you have a solution of the lab at the end of the lab. So you can follow that solution as well if you stuck somewhere. So then we have in Linux, everything is a file. We say that in Linux we have everything is a file. It's either is a device driver, either is a configuration file. So it's a file. So mostly in this chapter, managing files from the command line, will be studying about the Linux file system hierarchy. In Windows, you have seen there is C, D, but Linux has its own file system architecture. So we'll be studying about that one, that how, after that, how we'll be using the command line tool. Like you copy the files, you delete the file, you create the symbolic links. So in this chapter, you will be going through with these tasks. And then the most people I've faced in the career, either in the training or they are afraid of Linux. The problem with the people is that when we just try to remember everything, this is not, works with the Linux operating system or all of the other products. So Linux has a very powerful help available in the system. Keep in mind, some people say Google is my best friend, but I say if you know the system, system is good friend. Linux has a very powerful and powerful help features. They have a lot of tools like manual pages, the help commands, and even sometimes you will find manuals over there. And then we'll be in fifth chapter, you will be studying about the creating the files, viewing the files, editing files. Because I told already, in Linux, everything is a file, and most files are simple text files. So in the case, you need a text editor. So Linux has a variety of text editors like Nano and some other, like graphical editors are also available, like gedit, like it's similar to Notepad. But the most powerful editor is Vim, which is known as very improved editor. Actually, Vim comes from the Unix, the parent of Linux. So here you will learn about Vim, how to create a file, how to put the text, how to delete the text, how to save as, like same features which you do with the same task with you with mostly with Microsoft Word or other tools, or maybe the Notepad. You will be studying all this stuff, but all this will be about the shortcuts like keys. Okay, like for example, if you want to delete a line, a text from a text file inside the editor, you will be using the Vim editor, and you will be use dd command, mean delete. And if you want to copy, then you will use P, and then you will want to save, then you will use W command. So all this you will study in this chapter. And then the most powerful feature we have in the system is the system security. We have users and we have groups. Likewise, in Windows, we have very powerful tools here to manipulate users and groups. So we'll be you studying about the users, groups, and how we'll create them. And then we'll also study about some policies, but that will be in a second level course, which is level 2 and known as RH134. And then we'll be working with controlling access to files, like how we can store the files, like group ownership, file ownership. And the same, we will set the default permissions for the access, like how we can change the mode, how we can give the permission, like okay, normally and then Linux we don't have execute permission, because in Linux by default no file is executable. So if we have a script or some exe file, like in Windows we have calculator exe, we just click on calculator icon and it open executable files. In Linux we have the concept of binary files. So each executable file is known as binary files. So binary files are scripts. Scripts are it's a very these are a piece of code which you use to automate different tasks. Okay, for example, what is script? It's a set of commands we use to automate certain tasks. Like okay, you want to create a user, set the password, assign some policies. So we will, if you want to do it on multiple systems, or want to redo another system, then you write a script. And script need to be executable. Normal other files, they don't need to be executable. So in chapter 8, we'll be studying about the monitoring Linux systems, like how we monitor different processes. Like sometimes, some application become unresponsive. The main issue we got is that the system has, application maybe is poorly written and try to access more memory or more CPU time, and it disturb other system or crash itself. So we can prioritize the applications. Like we can put them in low priority, high priority, or medium priority. And then, sometimes, there are the processes like you need to stop. And every process has its parent process. So sometimes, and the other process, under the process, they are in the same process tree. So sometimes, we have process which we have to terminate the process. So we have to kill the process, and then we could use accordingly the tools like killing the process, the kill command. Then there is also a kill command, which is definitely is use some like process IDs. But then we have a pkill command, like you have running a web server and you have like a 200 process. So killing every process is very difficult to you. So you will use pkill and use the pattern where the process name is used as pattern. So pkill httpd. So it will kill all the 200 processes. And then Linux has a services and daemons. The most services and daemons are like it's a FTP daemon, it's a database daemon like MariaDB, it's a MySQL DB, it's also web server HTTP daemon. So there is also very powerful daemon known as shell, SSHD daemon. It depends on open SSH, and it's used to access the system remotely. So how we can start them, stop them, configure them, or like sometimes we have services like which run on the same port. So in that case, we have to manage them separately. Like if we are running a web server, two web server, one is Apache and one is Nginx. So in that case, we need either we have to change the port, or sometimes we need to use only one server. Like either we are using HTTPD, either we are using Nginx. So we have to mask one service, so other service can't be started either accidentally, either intentionally with any system administrator. And chapter 10, we will be studying about SSH configuration. Mostly when you have you people mostly dealing with the servers in the cloud and might be in using cPanel or individual servers or bare metal servers. SSH is very critical to system administrator. Mostly we see a lot of people attacking on SSH servers, trying to guess the password, username and password, and running a lot of dictionary attacks. So what we do is we use, as SSH has a different authentication features like key-based authentication, host-based authentication, and password authentication. So mostly what we do, we disable the root user, which is a system administrator authentication, and use a simple user, and create a key-based key pair, and use that key-based authentication feature. And then there's sometimes you need to deny some users to log into SSH servers, so you can configure these services accordingly. And then we have a most critical part about logs. So logging is very important in any operating system, but in Linux is somehow more level that we mostly use log files to analysis, about the errors, about some other issues, like if the server debug logs, the debugging service is not starting, and if server is crashed, why? So we'll be studying about syslog. It's known as syslog. Syslog can be used in an encrypted fashion as well, and we can use certificate services to a digital certificate to control that logging as well. But this will not be in this will not be the part of this this exam or training. It is discussed in the future exam with about the security or the training. So and the chapter 12, we will be studying about the networking, how we can manage the network devices, and how we can manage the different type of cards. Like there are PCIe cards, there are maybe we have some like embedded cards, so they come with the different in naming, so we can have a standard naming for them. Like first device is known as ETH0, ETH1, ETH2, like same one, but sometimes you say it's a WL0, mean it's a first wireless card. So we can change the name as well. Sometimes it has a very long name, so we can use some features to write into the grub and change it. So here we'll be discussing or studying about how we can validate the network configuration, how we configure our TCP/IP protocol setting like IP address, subnet mask, gateway address, even DNS address. And also we have a same I told we have the guided accesses, so we have the lab as well. And then we have a very again a very powerful feature about the archiving and transferring the file. And the system mostly we create the file, and then what we do, we compress them, we archive them, and there's a lot of formats like gzip, bzip. And if we talk about Windows, we have WinZip, right? WinZip tool. Then we have a very strong tool like 7-zip. So those tools can also be used. But Linux has a very powerful command known as tar. So we can use that tar command to create the files. And then we have, we can synchronize the files. Linux has a very powerful tool known as rsync, which can be used to synchronize data bit by bit on the local file system as well on the remote system. So we'll learn about the rsync as well. We also use, as we use SSH to access the system, we'll use SCP to copy files from one system to other system. And then we'll be in the chapter 14, we'll be studying about installing and updating system software packages. System administrator, the most critical duty is to maintaining the software packages intact as well. Like he need to update them. He need to, if there is in Red Hat, there is a term known as errata. It's come that if there are like security, there are a lot of security vulnerabilities day by day, a lot of backdoors. So what happened if some service is compromised? Red Hat generate a patch and which is known as errata. So we have to deploy that errata or CVs on that one. So for that, let me talk over here about Red Hat Enterprise Linux as well. So what Red Hat do? What is Red Hat? So Red Hat actually is support different projects, open source projects, and then they involve them, they support them, and then they might be they take over them, and might be they use that open source code as well. For example, Red Hat has a very powerful product known as Red Hat Cloud Forms. So which is used to manage the cloud. Like you have VMware, so you want to create the virtual machines over there. Then you want to do the metering, billing, all this stuff. You want to generate the bill report that, okay, this customer use this much hours, this much storage. So this product is specially for the Red Hat for cloud management, Red Hat Cloud Form. So what is? It's not Red Hat product. It's actually it's an open source project named as ManageIQ. So what Red Hat did, they supported that project. They invested in that project, and finally they used that upstream product, ManageIQ, and build their own product, and they are supporting that product. So they don't, Red Hat, keep in mind, Red Hat don't charge for the for the product itself, like Microsoft and other vendors like Oracle or VMware. Red Hat don't charge for the product. They just charge for support. So they have their own system known as subscription. So they have products for subscription up to 1 to 10 years, and everything is based on your sport level. They have like a multiple sport level, sport levels. They have different sport type. Like sometimes they can provide you telephonic support. Sometimes a Red Hat engineer can fly to your facility and help you out over there. So they charge on that one. And so for that, you have to register, you have to download the product and register with Red Hat. So over here, we learn about registering our with the Red Hat network, and then we will how we use our licenses, like how we check the how many licenses are consumed, how many licenses are available. And then the beauty is that you can also create a SOS report. If you have an issue in the system, you can generate a SOS report and send to Red Hat team, and they analyze and that report and provide the solution on that one. So Red Hat use RPM. There are two distros. Let me discuss about the distros. So actually, distros are distribution based on Linux kernel, which is developed by Linus Torvalds in 1990. He's the guy, Linus Torvalds, who built the enterprise this Linux software. So it's an open source and free. So the what the Red Hat do, they actually use that code and push different tools inside, and then they made testing inside their labs. Red Hat, they had their own labs where they test the systems, and Red Hat has multiple other operating system as well. Like you guys heard about the Fedora. So Fedora is actually community version. Red Hat don't support. But Red Hat requests you to use that Fedora for only personal systems, not for your production systems. So Red Hat use, there are different distros who are using that Linux kernel. So there is also SUSE. There is also Debian. The most powerful Debian distribution is Ubuntu, and which is free, but also they have some side there. They also provide support as well. So Red Hat use Red Hat Enterprise Linux system for the production, and Red Hat use RPM as a package manager. So in Windows, you have seen that you just click, you have an exe file or MSI file, you just click them and you start installing. But in Red Hat, we use RPM, Red Hat Package Manager. So Red Hat has a different software packages known as RPM. So we use that RPM, Red Hat Package Manager, to query, install, or remove those packages. But that IPM is on RPM utility is not very powerful. So we mostly face the issue that some dependent software is not available. Likewise, you guys mostly, I assume that you guys work with Windows, and you have seen when you install some software, Java or something, they say we require a .NET Framework 4 or something. So that's actually the software dependency for that Java or the application you tend to install. But same over here. When we install some RPM, we say, okay, I need these RPMs as well. So you have to look for those RPMs. So Red Hat has created a front end, which is known as Yum. But now in Enterprise, we also, Yum is a yellow dog updater, which is actually a front end for Yum. So Red Hat software banks or software sources are known as software repositories. So Red Hat has its own repositories as well. Like, okay, you have if you are you have multiple systems and you are using to make high available them. So they have Linux HA repository. Then if you are going to deploy and manage your softwares and deployment automated fashion, then they have Ansible. So they have Ansible repository. And then you tend to make a infrastructure as a service cloud. So they have OpenStack, Red Hat OpenStack platform. So they have the OpenStack repositories. Similarly, Red Hat has its own repositories, and there are also third-party repositories available online. So we can use that repositories as well. So what the benefit of that Yum using Yum is that if some package is available in one repository and some dependent package is available in other repositories, so it can intelligently fetch that software and install them. And the beauty with the Redit 8 is the Yum become modular. Like okay, you are developing or working on a Python on your system, or might be PHP, multiple PHP versions, like a PHP 5, PHP 6 or 7, or like you are working on a Python 2 and Python 3. So now that they introduce Yum modular, so they are the modules. You can disable the module. Okay, you want to enable the module, like you are working with the Python 2, so you can enable the Python 2 module and disable the Python 3 module. So you can switch on and off those modules. So this is the new feature which come with Yum. Yum is very powerful tool. Like you can even downgrade that the softwares as well. Like okay, you have some like you have a system with the PHP 5 or 6, and you just upgraded that PHP 5 to 6, and you mess up with code or something, might be your system is not compatible, so you can download that software on the fly. So there are a lot of stuffs we are studying in the training. It's just like a demonstration, so I can go thoroughly. And now in chapter 15, we will be going for accessing Linux file systems. So how we can, like Windows, you use a different tool to format the partitions, create the partitions. So same, you have seen, you just create the partition and assign a label and you will see that, okay, this is D and the label is data, and this is E and it's a backups. So same way, we can use Linux disks in Linux to partition them and format them. And then the concept of connecting to the system hierarchy is known as mounting. So we can mount, like if if I say the D is mounted with a D letter, so you can also mount it to /software/web. So it's known as mounting. So unmounting is to disconnect that file system from the hierarchy. And even in future, we also study in 134 course about the mounting other file system, like there is a Linux use a family file system known as NFS, network file system. It's a Unix proprietary file system, and if you use actually you share data and between the Unix family and the Linux family. But sometimes you need to collaborate with or integrate with your Windows systems as well. So you have a Windows shares and you want to mount that share on the Linux systems, and vice versa. You have a couple of Windows systems and you have a Linux server, and you want to share that data between those systems, like those systems, even printer. Then we use Samba. So we'll be studying that in the next level course, because these level 1 courses are just actually on level 1 and level 2, what is difference between the level 1 is actually, you can say, it's a foundation for level 2 course, and level 2 course is actually for exam. So especially for OpenStack, OpenShift, we have multiple courses on like a level 1 and level 2 courses, and then level 3 courses. So same in Linux operating system, we have level 1, level 2, and level 3. So this is RH 1 to 4 is a level 1 course. Actually, it's a foundation for, because we mostly face or have the people who don't have any Linux experience, any Linux experience, any prior Linux experience. So we start from scratch. So all courses, these are, sorry, but we have also other courses, like if you guys already have pretty much good experience on Linux, like 1 or 2 experience, you can go with a new course like known as RH199, which is known as fast track. It's a fast track course, which is actually combination of 1 to 4 and 134. but they also skip a lot of basic chapters from that one, because they assume you are an experienced Linux professional, experienced Ubuntu. It can be you can be like it's a Ubuntu, or even Solaris. But preferably they say that you should have at least 2 year Linux experience, and they also say that you need at least 2 to 3 year uh, Linux system administration experience to appear in Reddit a system administrator exam, which is EX200. So there is sometimes you guys might be confusing that, okay, this is RH, this is SAF, this is JB. This is, let me go through the Reddit website and discuss some other courses as well. So we will be going to the learning and sports. So let's see about the certifications. So Reddit as actually, let's see about the pathway. So the first certification we already demonstrating about is RACSA, Reddit Certified System Administrator. So actually, if we explore this certification, so you see, prove your skills and knowledge. So what is RACSA? RACSA, that you have to understand the about the essential tools, Linux system essential tools, like how to handle the files, create directories, delete directories, and how to use the command line, and how to use the documentation. And then you have to operate the system, like how to boot the system into different levels. So the system, Linux system has run levels. That is actually previous term, but now it's changed. Like it's now it's known as targets. So it has run level, that the emergency run level, where if you have the storage as issue, then there is also rescue level, where your password is gone and you want to reset get your password back. And then then there are some levels, like you want to run the server in graphical mode or multi-user mode. So you have to study about this thing. And then you identify the processes, which how you can identify them, you can start them, stop them. Then also stopping, mostly now mostly most because of this cloud and virtualization evaluation. The most systems are virtual systems. You have a physical machine, and you install, top of that you install virtualize any virtualization tool, and then you create the virtual. And so how you can start them, how you can stop them, and how you can auto start them. And then about this controlling subsys. Then how you configure the local storage, and using the partition, and then the logical volumes. You guys might heard about the logical volumes. Actually, LVM, logical volume manager. Normal system we previously was using was a flat file system or flat storage system. Like you created some partition, like you create a root partition to install the software on that one. Then you create the boot partition to put the boot related files, like your initial RAM disk and other stuffs, which is needed over that. And then you create a swap partition to accommodate the memory need. And then you create a partition for like maybe you are creating it as a like a web server, using as a web hosting company, though you created a separate var triple w to host that website for your customers, or might be your own company. So what happened mostly, sometimes you become out of space. So you don't sometimes you become out of space, and sometimes you need to reuse that, because I assume that your server has 10 disks, or maybe 10 disks or 5 disks, and you want to your data footprint is small, and you want to reuse those 5 disks which are extra for you to other site or other systems. You can't do, because it's a flat files. You can't either shrink, either expand that file system. So here comes logical volume manager, known as LVM. So LVM is very strong. We just join a bunch of desks, you create a volume, and then you can divide into logical volume. And same, you can shrink if you need more storage. Like, okay, you have more customers and you need 500 GB data. You grab a new disk from the market and put inside, and just extend or your volume, and within seconds it's working. So the logical volumes is very critical for this for your storage infrastructure. Then how you can create the and configure the file system, like system file system attributes. Like sometimes you want to lock the file, so nobody can change the files. Then have the set the permissions, encryption, and then also the concept of ACL. Like Windows, when you see go on the properties, you found a lot of people have the access, like system has users group administrator access. So you can also, we use also POSIX ACL feature to implement access control list as well. And also we can use network file system. I already discussed the Samba, NFS. And then deployment of new systems, and on the top of them you have to deploy the software, and have to which include the deployment include the installation of software, updation of the software, downgradation of the software, and managing about some other core services. And then you also system administrator is also one of the critical duty of the system administrator to take care of the users groups side as well. How you can create new user groups, and how you can attach your system to a centralized directory services, like for Red Hat directory service, a Red Hat IDM. And then you can also use Microsoft Active Directory services to use for authentication for those users as well. And then the Linux has a very powerful features about the security. One is known as SC Linux, and one is firewall. So the difference you are seeing that is firewall and SC Linux. Some people think that SC Linux is a firewall. SC Linux is not a firewall. Actually, SC Linux, I didn't explain about Red Hat. Why people think that they should use the Red Hat. Like back in see when the Cisco introduced UCS sys boxes. So 80% the OS running on those UCS boxes were enterprise Linux. And some people, I didn't told you guys about that thing, because there is not a QA session at the moment. Actually, some people ask me, sir, why I have a lot of students, because I'm teaching from last 25 years. So a lot of students. So ask, sir, why we use Linux? What is the feature? I said your only space center, NASA Space Center, is hosted by Linux. So what I can talk about the reliability, security, performance, because your NASA alone, is one. They have only one, space center, and that is hosted on the Linux operating system. So and in Linux, the people say, okay, we use which Linux we use. So why Linux is powerful? So the Linux is powerful because of SC Linux. In 1990s, NSA.gov, National Security Agency of America, they actually make evaluation why there are the loopholes, why are their backdoors, why are the threats, why the Linux systems got hacked or something. Because Linux, these are also made by humans, so definitely they have some breaches or something. So they make an evaluation that why these guys are hacked or why they are. So they finally evaluation got reported that 99% are the inside users who make your system vulnerable to outside world. Like for example, if you configure, you have your home directory and you just give the permission, like in a folder, everyone full control. So you think that you gave the permission to the system only. No, your system is a part of a huge bunch of systems known as internet. So you guys are connected with each other. So you have to open a backdoor giving everyone full control permission. Either he's sitting in India, either he's sitting in Pakistan in village, either he's sitting in USA or Dubai. So this is how we manage that. So they worked, the NSA and Red Hat work on the development of SC Linux, security enhanced Linux, which is actually sometime when I see the people, they say, oh, this first command they put, say, okay, disable SC Linux. Then I laugh because you made the system vulnerable. You did every service correctly, everything. You have firewall, but you cut the force and the arms of the operating system itself. So without SC Linux, there is no security in Linux. So Red Hat, was the first guy who developed this SC Linux with NSA and who embedded inside the kernel. Now it's embedded inside the Linux kernel, but Red Hat was the first to say, yes, I'm working with you and I'm hosting this component inside. And the beauty of SC Linux is that from last 12 to 14 years, there is no vulnerability found. There is no threat found on this SC Linux component. So this is about the audience, like how, for which you will use, like IT professional, who want to earn the certified engineer certification. For those people, there is a concept of non-current. After 3 years, you have to actually renew your certification. So the Red Hat certification don't expire, but they become non-current. Like, okay, I'm certified on Red Hat 7, for example. So after when Red Hat 9 will come, I will be non-current. So I have to, upgrade myself. So this is for them as well, and also the people who are new to system administration and get recognized to the in the market. So they come for this certification. And also you see Linux system administration who require a certification either by organization of our. Actually, this is also DOD 8570 directive as well. And after that, you have exam. This EX Red Hat exams are known as EX Expertise 200. They are performance-based exams. Some are like 2.5 hours, some are 3 hours, some are 4 hours, and sometimes back in old time, some are like more than 6 hours, which I attempted and passed. But no, we don't have such longer, exams available. Maximum is 4. No, I seen maximum is 4 hours. Because previously the 6 hours exam was because these RSCSA and RSC was a combined exam. There's some question. Let me see. There's some participant who want to talk. Yes, some question. Definitely, Linux is more faster than all terms, because back in when I switched to, let me tell you why I switched to Linux. Back in 2006, early 2006, I was someone told me that there is a Fedora core. I was thinking to configure a proxy for my students in the lab. We have Windows. I was teaching MCSE that time, and I was Microsoft certified that time. So I set up this internet proxy server using this Fedora Core 4. And I found, when I use that one, some students sometimes, and I had also used a Linux system inside, install Fedora, I start browsing and then. So my student mostly complaints are our browsing is not working, and I was very, happy with everything. And then tested other stuff like I do RDP and other thing. So I seen that a lot of more like a strength in Linux system. So that's why I switch over to that's why I switch over to Linux, and I recommend Linux. And after that, if you see my profile, I have more than 100 certificates from different vendor. Like if you talk about Symantec, Symantec, Juniper, VMware, even Kaspersky. But I only work for open source stuff and Red Hat. Is this okay? From where I can use this unmute or something so I can talk. Actually, this someone who raised a question. So for that, let's continue. So for that, if you guys are starting from zero, then you for Windows System Administrator or the guys who are totally new to the system, like they are just graduating or they just graduated from any university or they, anywhere. They are just newbies. So those guys are known as newbies in our time. So those guys will be using this Red Hat System Administration 1. The course code is RH124, and currently some institutions might be in the worldwide. They are providing training for V7, but I started V8 version 8, which is the current from last year. And even you can attempt this V7 exam till October, but again you have to upgrade to this V8. So the first training is RH124, the second one is RH134, and then on for the Unix administrators or other experienced Linux professional, they can choose a Rapid Track course as well, which is known as RSCSA Rapid Track, and code is 199. And then we have RAC. It's actually the people know, and I say it's a real spicy exam for the professional because actually they test engineer skills over there. So they validate your engineer skills over there. So for existing RACs, there is a roadmap that they can pass this exam, this RSC automation exam, and they upgrade to this one. They don't need to upgrade their system administrator. For example, one of you is RSC on 7, so he don't need to go for EX200 exam. He can directly go to EX294, which is RSC automation. And it's a combination of this Ansible automation and RSC. So for the certification candidates, say this can also use like skills. They also test this 7 and 8 skills. So for this, you can use you can use these courses as well, like DO 447 and DO 448 as well to study this RAC. So actually, let me explore the course for this one for you. And then we have RSCA. I'll explore that. Let me explore this exam courses for. So there is exam known as 294. So this is the RSC exam. Actually, audience for this exam is system administrator. You tend to be RSC, and it can be required for your organization or your own career and assessment perspectives. So these are the prerequisites for the exams. Either you studies 134, 124, or 194, and then you have taken this this course, which is known as Red Hat Linux automation with Ansible. So over there, the course content is about installing installation of Ansible and writing the playbooks, creating the inventories, scaling the playbooks. That is nice. So prerequisite for this course is that you should be certified as a system administrator, or you have equal distribution, equal system administrator experience or knowledge. Reddit have the assessment as well. Like if you want to study this course, you have to pass the assessment from their website, and then they know that their result will be sent to us, and we know that you qualify or not. So this is also again the outline which I discussed for RH124. So deployment of Ansible, interaction, implementation, or writing of playbooks, variables and facts, task controls, and a lot of other stuff, troubleshooting and also automating the task. Previously, we use this Bash script to automate the task, but now we have Ansible, which do. And the feature of the main, I worked on other, these tools as like Puppet, Chef, Cobbler, a lot of other tools I work. If I talk about the Puppet is not agentless. We have to, if I want to, I have 1,000 web servers, and I want to, manage them using Puppet, write the code, in DML sort of language like Ruby and this. I have to write the code for them as well, and I have to install the agent on each 1,000 servers. Either they are physical, either they are virtual machines. So that was a headache for us, and with the blessing, we got a new tool, Ansible. The Ansible is agentless. The beauty of Ansible is it's agentless, and it don't need any agent to deploy on any Linux-based systems. And it has a lot of modules. Like it mostly require Python, but Cisco. If you have Cisco, you have Juniper. Sometimes you have to manage the devices, network devices, other devices which don't has operating system like Linux or Unix. So or there we use raw modules. And for Windows, Linux is also the beauty of this Ansible is that it can also do same task, automation tasks, which it does do on Linux system. But for that, we need a Windows RM module. But again, for Linux, it don't need any agent or anything to install on the devices. And the beauty is idempotency. Idempotency is the beauty. Like, okay, for example, if you are you flown somewhere for some project, and you got like some pieces of clothes, like you have 12 12 shirts, like 6 pants, and a lot of other stuff with you, socks and this thing. And after that, you came back home, and there are some pieces of clothes, they are washed, they are already washed, mean you didn't use them, they are not used, they are clean. So you ask your wife, your sister, or yourself, you put everything inside the washing machine and start. So it's a dull approach. The people sometimes they say hard work, but no, we are in the generation of smart work. If someone does that task in 8 hours, and someone in 1 hour, so I'll prefer 1 hour. I don't care how hard work it do or something. So idempotency is relates that what you put everything, or your wife, or your daughter, or sister, or brother, or mother might be, they put everything inside. So it's a dull approach. So what Ansible does, it do an independent way. Mean it will the wash clothes, it will separate the wash clothes and start from the bad ones. So for example, if you wrote a playbook for the 1,000 web servers, and 1,000 actually hosts their web servers, their load balancer, their DB servers, their Negus servers for monitoring, and there are also some other servers, might be DNS servers, DHCP servers. So actually you are mean to say you are running that Ansible playbook on the bunch of those infrastructure servers. So what happened, you first time you run the playbook, and uh, might be some servers were down, and some because of you didn't manage in a right way. I have some features like forking and parallelism series. We'll discuss when we go to that course, but I'm just trying to explain that redundancy feature. So some were unreachable, some were down. So I said that 100 servers, they were not done. 900 servers are, the task was done successfully on those 900 servers, but 100 servers, because of bandwidth issues or something unreachable or shut down, so those are not deployed. The code, the Ansible code, piece of code are not deployed on those. So what will happen when you run that task runtime, that Ansible playbook runtime, it will start from 901. It will not start from 1. So that's the beauty of Ansible. Like, okay, you create an Ansible playbook and for your web server, you're creating some users and group. So you run the playbook. First time it created, next time it will say state not change. Mean it's not changed because that task is already done. So it will not touch that task. It say that's successful, but it's not, it's an old one because it's check the previous steps as well. Then let me discuss about RSCA. So there are different tracks for us. This is RSCA infrastructure, RSCA application, RSCA cloud, and data center. So the OpenStack exams are mostly for cloud, like OpenStack administration is EX210. Then we have EX220, so Reddit specialist in hybrid cloud management exam. So actually this exam is about Red Hat Cloud Forms. So it's the course code is CL220. And then we have the Red Hat storage service, which I'm previously certified. It's known as Gluster storage. So it's it's RH236, course code is RH236, and again on that product they have the exam EX236. And then we have EX 240 API, and then we have JBoss application. So the course code is JB240, JBoss 240. So it's a JBoss 7 administration exam. And then we have EX280. Actually, the DevOps courses, they coded with DO. So the course is DO280. And the exam is OpenShift administration exam. All again, exam code is the same for EX280. And then we have a development. Like you say, you have seen in the market CKA and CKD. So EX280 is CKA, and EX288 is CKD. And then this is RSC exam, and then this is the old exam EX300, which is on V7, and it's no more after 1st October after 1st October 2020. It will be gone. And then EX300 310 is the OpenStack engineer exam. And there is also code you have seen. There is a course with the EX125. There are some with 100, some on 200, some on 300, some on 400. So 200 and 200. Some exams are some 200 are system administration level exams, and some are architect level exams, and some. So 300 is our 294 or these exams are actually engineer level exams. You have seen EX300 and EX310. So EX300 is a certified engineer, old certified engineer exam, and EX301 is OpenStack engineer exam. And then you have virtualization exam is also EX3, and then we have troubleshooting 3, and then you have seen there some exam with the code with the code 4. I'm almost finished. If anybody have questions about any exam or especially this RH124, uh, they are now free to ask. And then for registration and other stuff like exam, and you can talk to our sales team. If anyone has any question, you can ask. I'm available over here now. So now we'll be taking a 5 to 10 minute break, and we'll start with the RH124 chapter 1 actual course. I hope all everyone is good and don't have any questions related to Red Hat, related to Red Hat trainings, exams, and everything.